A short view of the humors and customs of the savages. The savages are utter strangers to distinctions of property, for what belongs to one is equally another's. If any one of them be in danger at the beaver hunting, the rest fly to his assistance without being so much as asked. If his fusee bursts, they are ready to offer him their own. If any of his children be killed or taken by the enemy, he is presently furnished with as many slaves as he hath occasion for. Money is in use with none of them but those that are Christians, who live in the suburbs of our towns. The others will not touch or so much as look upon silver, but give it the odious name of the French serpent. They'll tell you that amongst us, the people murder, plunder, defame, and betray one another for money, that the husbands make merchandise of their wives, and the mothers of their daughters, for the lucre of that metal. They think it unaccountable that one man should have more than another, and that the rich should have more respect than the poor. In short, they say, the name of savages which we bestow upon them would fit ourselves better, since there is nothing in our actions that bears an appearance of wisdom. Such as have been in France were continually teasing us with the faults and disorders they observed in our towns, as being occasioned by money. 'Tis in vain to remonstrate to them how useful the distinction of property is for the support of a society. They make a jest of what's to be said on that head. In fine, they neither quarrel nor fight, nor slander one another. They scoff at arts and sciences, and laugh at the difference of degrees which is observed with us. They brand us for slaves, and call us miserable souls, whose life is not worth having, alleging that we degrade ourselves in subjecting ourselves to one man who possesses the whole power, and is bound by no law but his own will, that we continually jars amongst ourselves, that our children rebel against their parents, that we imprison one another, and publicly promote our own destruction. Besides, they value themselves above anything that you can imagine, and this is the reason they always give for it, that one's as much master as another, and since men are all made of the same clay, there should be no distinction or superiority among them. They pretend that their contented way of living far surpasses our riches, that all our sciences are not so valuable as the art of leading a peaceful, calm life, that a man is not a man with us any farther than the riches will make him. But among them the true qualifications of a man are to run well, to hunt, to bend the bow and manage the fusee, to work a canoe, to understand war, to know forests, to subsist upon a little, to build cottages, to fell trees, and to be able to travel 100 leagues in a wood without any guide or other provision than his bow and arrows. They say we are great cheats in selling them bad wares 4 times dearer than they are worth by way of exchange for their beaver skins, that our fuses are continually bursting and laming them after they have paid sufficient prices for them. I wish I had time to recount the innumerable absurdities they are guilty of relating to our customs, but to be particular upon that head would be a work of 10 or 12 days. Their victuals are either boiled or roasted, and they lap great quantities of the broth, both of meat and of fish. They cannot bear the taste of salt or spices, and wonder that we are able to live so long as 30 years, considering our wines, our spices, and our immoderate use of women. They dine generally 40 or 50 in a company, and sometimes above 300. 2 hours before they begin, they employ themselves in dancing, and each man sings his exploits, and those of his ancestors. They dance but one at a time, while the rest are set on the ground, and mark the cadence with an odd tone, he, after which everyone rises and dances in his turn. The warriors attempt nothing without the advice of the council, which is composed of the old men of the nation, that is to say, such as are above 60. Before they are assembled, a crier gives notice of it through all the streets in the village. Then these old men run to a certain cottage designed for that purpose, where they seat themselves in a square figure, and after they have weighed what is proposed for the benefit of the nation, the speaker goes out of the cottage, and the young men get about him, and listen with great attention to the resolves of the old ones, crying out at the end of every sentence, "That's good." They have several sorts of dances. The principal is that of the calumet. The rest are the chief's or commander's dance, the warrior's dance, the marriage dance, and the dance of the sacrifice. They differ from one another both in the cadence and in the leaps, but 'tis impossible to describe them, for that they have so little resemblance to ours. That of the calumet is the most grave and handsome, but they don't perform that but upon certain occasions, viz., when strangers pass through their country, or when their enemies send ambassadors to treat of a peace. If they approach to a village by land, when they're ready to enter, they depute one of this number, who advances and proclaims that he brings the calumet of peace, the rest stopping in the meantime, till he calls to them to come. Then some of the young men march out of the village, at the gate of which they form an oval figure, and when the strangers are come up to them, they dance all at a time, forming a second oval round him that bears the calumet. This dance continues half an hour. Then they receive the travelers with some ceremony, and conduct them to a feast. The ceremonies are the same to those that come by water, with this difference, that they send a canoe to the foot of the village with the calumet of peace upon its prow, in the shape of a mast, and one comes from the village to meet them. The dance of war is done in a circle, during which the savages are seated on the ground. He that dances moves from the right hand to the left, singing in the meantime the exploits of himself and his ancestors. At the end of every memorable action, he gives a great stroke with a club upon a stake placed in the middle of the circle, near certain players, who beat time upon a sort of a kettle drum. Every one rises in his turn to sing his song, and this is commonly practiced when they go to war, or are come from it. The greatest passion of the savages consists in the implacable hatred they bear to their enemies, that is, all nations with whom they are at open war. They value themselves mightily upon their valor, insomuch that they have scarce any regard to anything else. One may say that they are wholly governed by temperament, and their society is perfect mechanism. They have neither laws, judges, nor priests. They are naturally inclined to gravity, which makes them very circumspect in their words and actions. They observe a certain medium between gaiety and melancholy. The French air they could not away with, and there was none but the younger sort of them that approved of our fashions. I have seen savages, when they've come a great way, make no other compliment to the family than, "I am arrived, I wish all of you a great deal of honor." Then they take their pipe quietly, without asking any questions. When that's done, they'll say, "Hearke, friend, I am come from such a place, I saw such a thing, etc." When you ask a question, their answer is exceeding concise, unless they are members of the council. Otherwise you'll hear them say, "That's good, that signifies not, that's admirable, that has reason in it, that's valiant." If you tell a father of a family that his children have signalized themselves against the enemy and have took several slaves, his answer is short, "That's good," without any farther inquiry. If you tell him his children are slain, he'll say immediately, "That signifies not," without asking how it happened. When a Jesuit preaches to them the truth of the Christian religion, the prophecies, miracles, etc., they return you a "That's wonderful," and no more. When the French tell them of the laws of a kingdom, the justice, manners, and customs of the Europeans, they'll repeat you 100 times, that's reasonable. If you discourse them upon an enterprise of great importance, or that's difficult to execute, or which requires much thought, they'll say, "That's valiant," without explaining themselves, and will listen to the end of your discourse with great attention. Yet 'tis to be observed, when they're with their friends in private, they'll argue with as much boldness as those of the council. 'Tis very strange, that having no advantage of education, but being directed only by the pure light of nature, they should be able to furnish matter for a conference, which often lasts above 3 hours, and which turns upon all manner of things, and should acquit themselves of it so well, that I never repented the time I spent with these truly natural philosophers. When a visit is paid to a savage, at going in you must say, "I am come to see such an one." Then fathers, mothers, wives, children go out, or withdraw themselves to an apartment at one end of the cottage, and be who you will, come not near you to interrupt your conversation. The fashion is for him that is visited to offer you to eat, drink, and smoke, and one may use an entire freedom with them, for they don't much mind compliments. If one means to visit a woman, the ceremony is the same. "I am come to see such an one." Then everybody withdraws, and you tarry alone with her you come to see, but you must not mention anything amorous in the daytime, as I shall inform you elsewhere. Nothing surprised me more than to observe the quarrels between their children at play. A little after they are warmed, they'll tell one another, "You have no soul, you're wicked, you're treacherous." In the meantime, their companions, who make a ring about them, hear all quietly, without taking one side or the other, till they fall to play again. If by chance they come to blows, the rest divide themselves into 2 companies, and carry the quarrelers home. They are as ignorant of geography as of other sciences, and yet they draw the most exact maps imaginable of the countries they're acquainted with, for there's nothing wanting in them but the longitude and latitude of places. They set down the true north according to the pole star, the ports, harbors, rivers, creeks, and coasts of the lakes, the roads, mountains, woods, marshes, meadows, etc., counting the distances by journeys and half journeys of the warriors, and allowing to every journey 5 leagues. These chorographical maps are drawn upon the rind of your birch tree, and when the old men hold a council about war or hunting, they're always sure to consult them. The year of the Ottawas, the Outagamis, the Hurons, the Sauteurs, the Illinois, the Omamis, and several other savages, consists of 12 synodical lunar months, with this difference. When 30 moons are spent, they add 1 supernumerary month to make it up, which they call the lost moon, and from thence begin their account again, after the former method. All these months have very suitable names. For instance, what we call March, they call the worm moon, for when the worms quit the hollow chops of the trees, where they sheltered themselves in the winter. April is called the month of plants, May of flowers, and so of the others. I say, at the end of these 30 months, the next that follows is supernumerary, and not counted. For example, we'll suppose the month of March to be the 30th lunar month, and consequently, the last of the epocha. Next, that should be counted the month of April, whereas the lost moon takes place of it, and must be over before they begin their account again, and this month with the others makes about 1.5 years. Because they have no weeks, they reckon from the 1st till the 26th of these sort of months, and that contains just that space of time which is between the first appearance of the moon at night till, having finished its course, it becomes almost invisible in the morning, and this they call the illumination month. For instance, a savage will say, "I went away the 1st of the month of sturgeons," that's August, "and returned the 29th of the month of Indian corn," the same with our September. And next day, which is the last, I rested myself. As for the remaining 3 days and a half of the dead moon, during which 'tis impossible to be discerned, they give them the name of the naked days. They make as little use of hours as weeks, having never got the way of making clocks or watches, by the help of which little instruments they might divide the natural day into equal parts. For this reason, they are forced to reckon the natural day as well as the night by quarters, half and 3/4, the rising and the setting sun, the forenoon and the evening. As they have a wonderful idea of anything that depends upon the attention of the mind, and attain to an exact knowledge of many things by long experience. To cross a forest, for instance, of 100 leagues in a straight line, without straying either to the right or left, to follow the track of a man or beast upon the grass or leaves, so they know the hour of the day and night exactly, even when it is so cloudy that neither sun nor stars appear. I impute this talent to a steady command of mind, which is not natural to any but those whose thoughts are as little distracted as these men's are. They are more surprised to see some little problems of geometry put in practice than we would be to see water turned into wine. They took my graphometer for somewhat divine, being unable to guess how we could know the distance of places without measuring them by cords or rods, without there were some supernatural assistance. Longimetry pleased them far more than altimetry, because they thought it more necessary to know the breadth of a river than height of a tree, etc. I remember one day in a village of the Ottawas at Missilimakinac, a slave brought into the cottage where I was a sort of vessel made of a thick piece of soft wood, which he had borrowed on purpose, in which he pretended to preserve maple tree water. All the savages which saw this vessel fell to arguing how much it would hold, and with that view called for a pot and for water to determine the matter by measuring. The humor took me to lay with them a wager of a treat, that I could tell the quantity of water that would fill it better than they, so that finding by my computation that it held about 248 pots, or thereabouts, I went to make the trial, and made them not a little wonder that it failed but 1 or 2 pots, upon which I persuaded them that the pots that were wanting were soaked up by the new wood. But what was most pleasant, they were continually begging me to teach them stereometry, that they might make use of it upon occasion. 'Twas to no purpose to tell them 'twas impossible they should understand it, though there were reasons for it that might convince anybody but savages. They pressed me so much to it that I could not be quiet till I was forced to tell them that nobody could do it to perfection but the Jesuits. The savages prefer your little convex glasses of 2 inches diameter to any others, because they give but a faint representation of the pimples and blotches upon their faces. I remember that while I was at Missilimakinac, one of the peddlers called Coureur de Bois brought a convex glass that was pretty large, and consequently represented the face with some deformity. All the savages that saw this piece of catoptrix thought it no less miraculous than the awaker of a clock, or a magical lantern, or the spring of a machine. But what was most comical, there was among the rest of the spectators a Huronese girl, who told the peddler in a jocose way that if the glass had the virtue of magnifying the objects really, as it did in appearance, all her she-companions would give him in exchange as many beaver skins as would make his fortune. The savages have the most happy memory in the world. They can carry their memory so far back that when our governors or their deputies treated with them about war, peace, or trade, they proposed things contrary to what was offered 30 or 40 years ago. They reply that the French are false, and change their opinion every hour, that 'tis so many years since they said so, and to confirm it, bring you the porcelain collier that was given them at that time. You remember I acquainted you in my 7th letter that the colliers are the symbols of contracts, without which they conclude no business of moment. They pay an infinite deference to old age. The son that laughs at his father's advice shall tremble before his grandfather. In a word, they take the ancient men for oracles and follow their counsel accordingly. If a man tells his son 'tis time he should marry, or go to the war, or the hunting or shooting, he shall answer carelessly, "That's valiant, I thought so." But if his grandfather tells him so, the answer is, "That's good, it shall be done." If by chance they kill a partridge, a goose or duck, or catch any delicate fish, they never fail to present it to their oldest relations. The savages are wholly free from care. They do nothing but eat, drink, sleep, and ramble about in the night when they are at their villages. Having no set hours for meals, they eat when they're hungry, and commonly do it in a large company, feasting here and there by turns. The women and girls do the same among themselves, and don't admit any men into their company at that time. The women slaves are employed to sow and reap the Indian corn, and the men slaves have for their business the hunting and shooting where there is any fatigue, though their masters will very often help them. They have 3 sorts of games. Their game of counters is purely numerical, and he that can add, subtract, multiply, and divide best by these counters is the winner. This depends purely upon the mind. Another game, which is hazard and chance, is performed with 8 little stones, which are black on one side and white on the other. They're put on a plate, which they lay on the ground, throwing the little stones up in the air, and if they fall so as to turn up the black side, 'tis good luck. The odd number wins, and 8 whites or blacks wins double, but that happens but seldom. They have a third play with a ball, not unlike our tennis, but the balls are very large, and the rackets resemble ours, save that the handle is at least 3 foot long. The savages who commonly play at it in large companies of 300 or 400 at a time, fix 2 sticks at 500 or 600 paces distance from each other. They divide into 2 equal parties and toss up the ball about halfway between the 2 sticks. Each party endeavored to toss the ball to their side. Some run to the ball, and the rest keep at a little distance on both sides to assist on all quarters. In fine, this game is so violent that they tear their skins and break their legs very often in striving to raise the ball. All these games are made only for feasts or other trifling entertainments, for 'tis to be observed that as they hate money, so they never put it in the balance, and one may say, interest is never the occasion of debates among them. 'Tis not to be denied, but the savages are a very sensible people, and are perfectly well acquainted with the interest of their nations. They are great moralists, especially when they criticize on the manners of the Europeans, and are mightily upon their guard in our company, unless it be with such as they are intimately acquainted with. In other matters, they are incredulous and obstinate to the last degree, and are not able to distinguish between the chimerical supposition and an undoubted truth, or between a fair and a false consequence, as you'll see in the ensuing chapter, which treats of their belief, and in which I assure you, you'll meet with very odd notions.